Let's see. All right. So it is 4:01 on July 15th, 2026, and this is the Cape Cod Regional Government Assembly of Delegates Standing Committee on Finance. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, this virtual meeting of the Barnstable County Assembly of Delegates Standing Committee on Finance will be conducted via remote means only in accordance with applicable law. Members of the public may watch the meeting through live real-time broadcast at www.youtube.com/user/Barnstable County. A public participation guide and meeting documents are available in advance at www.capecod.gov. The County of Barnstable does not discriminate in the administration of its programs or activities on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or other category protected by state and federal anti-discrimination laws and regulations. Reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities are available upon request. For more information or to file a complaint, please contact Justina Marchek, Barnstable County ADA Non-Discrimination Coordinator at jmarczak@capecod.gov. Call 508-375-6646 or visit capecod.gov. Members of the public may also attend the meeting remotely through Microsoft Teams, and all of that information is available on the website. I know you had asked for a roll call, Mr. Chair, so let's start with Deputy Speaker Friesel.
Here.
Delegate Gallagher.
Here.
Vice Chair Killian.
Here.
Delegate O'Malley.
Here.
Dean Oman.
Here.
Chair Oman. And I believe we have Delegate Fuller on as well, although not Delegate King at this point, but you do have a full complement. And I do see Assistant Administrator Vera Harik on, as well as our Assistant Clerk, and I believe Mr. Dutton is going to be joining us as well. So I'll turn this over to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The agenda is pretty straightforward. The one thing that we have done, and I'm hoping that everyone's had a chance to read it, is we've come up with a model, a framework of what we would like to do concerning the FY 2028 budget, and within that proposed resolution, there's basically everything we've been talking about the FY 28 budget and beyond, in conjunction with the administration, and especially the chair of the director of finance, about what our obligations are to keep the county healthy going onward, not just FY 2028, which is our focus, but it even mentions the daunting task of maintaining financial stability well into the future from there, I think through 2031. So I hope everyone's got a chance to read that. I know that Owen can put it up on the screen if necessary, but has everybody, and we have Administrator Dutton with us as well. So thank you for being here, sir. With that, if we can, and everybody has read this, can I open it up by asking the committee what they think of this as a framework going forward? I don't see a hand yet. Oh, I do. Delegate Killian, please.
Thank you, Chair Oman. Yeah, I read through it. It was very thorough. It seems much of the information has been culled from discussions that we've had. It's probably the most thorough report, if you will, or certainly resolution as it pertains to the budget that we have ever put forward. Certainly the Assembly has put forward. John, you've been around long enough and remember some deficit years, and none of this heavy lifting was ever undertaken, and it was just sort of left to deal with as we go. And I really appreciate, and I hope that the taxpayers too, is how proactive we're willing to be. We're looking out over many years into the future in trying to deal with the problem now, rather than wait till it gets to be critical mass. There's a couple of things in there. Obviously, this is a draft one. There's a couple of, or at least one typo, and just wondering if we could also add in as fees in terms of how the labor assessment's going to go with the IT department as well, because I know we've discussed that over the years in terms of looking at their overhead costs and making sure that the costs we're charging out to the towns for whatever the service is covers what we're doing. So, I just had a chance to read this today, so I haven't really been able to digest it, but I certainly like what I see, and I'm hoping that the commissioners will look at this the same way we do, is being proactive and making sure that we take the steps necessary now. I know that we've discussed in the past tinkering with some of the measures that are in labor contracts, but it's always seemed to be too late to do it. But now we have an opportunity to actually put those plans in motion, nearly a year before those contracts need to be signed. So I think that's a very positive development.
Thank you for that. Deputy Speaker Frizell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, a few comments. Number one, overall, I mean, I like the approach for us to do this, and I think it should speak beyond FY28. I think we obviously need to do some more work on it. We need a little more feedback from the administration. In particular, I need some feedback on the questions that I did have some answers from the finance director, but I think we should discuss whether this is something which we should wait until we get more numbers in October or not. That's an issue. A question I have is whether this is something appropriate for a resolution. Is it better in the form of an ordinance? Is it better in the form of a report from the Finance Committee? Then a question I have is whether we should make, I guess, a more or a stronger recommendation concerning the approach we take to operating budget. Should we not just say, okay, it's level service, everybody come in with a level service number, regardless of what department you are? Or should we be looking at this in a more holistic way? In other words, should we look at departments and functions and say, is a level service not doing the job because some people that we really are underfunded, even though they're level funded, because that's a core mission. Some other departments are getting more than they should because they're periphery. So is it appropriate to start looking at the budget in that kind of way as well? Not just saying, keep your level service, but don't dip into reserves. I mean, so I just throw these things out as whether we need to hash this out more and before we finish our job in some format. And again, I throw the format issue out as well for discussion. But I do think we're headed in the right direction overall. I do think this is a very good head start on where we should go as a committee. But I think we need to still carry on a little discussion here among ourselves as to what we think, consensus as to what we think is the right format and the right, if we have all the right elements in the format that we'll call it for now, the resolution. So that's my initial thoughts, but I'm glad to hear and want to hear from other members.
Thank you. I now will recognize Delegate O'Malley.
Thank you, Chair. I think the first two delegates have already pretty clearly laid out the case. I think I would go a step further than Delegate Killian in saying that this is the most ambitious effort I've ever seen out of the Assembly or the commissioners to look ahead proactively at what's coming and to make long-term plans for what we're going to be able to do. I think this captures to a very large extent many of the ideas that we have tossed around. I mean, we basically have been, in a sense, brainstorming these last couple meetings, really looking at what are the possibilities, what options do we have, and I think we've successfully captured in this, and I give thanks to whoever has been involved in the preparation of this document. It does seem to me that the form of a resolution is appropriate rather than an ordinance, in that this will express the considered opinion of the assembly as a whole, and we're offering that advice both to the commissioners and to the administration. I don't know that it has any more. It's our opinion. I don't know that it goes any further than that, and I don't know that it needs an ordinance. Whether it could be a letter, I think is a weaker instrument. But I would favor that route. But I would say we have a lot here to work on. In terms of timing, I do think we should proceed and move along. There's always going to be more information coming. We have a number of studies in the wings that will allow us to refine numbers. But I think as an approach, this document gives a really an excellent framework to go forward. So yeah, I commend it, and I'll stop there.
Thank you. Delegate Gallagher, please.
Hi. I'm not ashamed to admit that today was the first time I looked at this document. I'm really, really impressed with all the work that's gone into it. I think it's terrific. I think in some cases, in some places, it goes too far. I'm reminded of weather forecasting, where the weatherman often tells us, "Oh, very, very strong winds coming," and what really shows up is a somewhat milder storm. In particular, I would note that both revenue and expenditure projections are conservative, meaning that revenues are likely to be higher and expenditures are likely to be lower. And therefore, the deficits we're looking at are merely, or not merely, but could be described as a worst case scenario. But in this document, they're presented as this is what's going to happen. And I think this resolution would benefit from some toning down of the language in places where it states will face, we should say may. I'm looking at, in particular, let's see, at line 28, for example, are expected to increase by approximately 900,000. I think that's a may and not an expected to. Also, there's a duplication between projected and are expected to. You don't need both of those things. There are many instances like that in this document, and I would go over it with a fine-tooth comb to tone it down a little bit. But overall, as I say, I think this is fantastic, and the writers are to be commended.
Thank you. I would recognize our chair. I mean our clerk, Mr. Fletcher, please.
Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Yeah, my apologies for not getting you a more solid draft before this morning. The intention was to make sure that there was something grounding the discussion today after talking with the speaker, the deputy speaker, the chair of the committee. I appreciate that you guys find it helpful. Both assistant clerk and I have been working on this, but in some senses you wrote it because it as you're saying, it's the discussions that we've had over the course of the last 3 meetings. And so whether it's in this meeting or I can turn on track changes so that for Mr. Gallagher, for Delegate Gallagher, Mr. Gallagher for me, Sam, that you guys can go through it and make suggested changes before a following meeting, make comments directly on the document to kind of go over it with that fine-tooth comb, and then hopefully by the time that we meet again, you'll have something to go over in public in a meeting to kind of get the document to where you want it to be. But it was intended to be a start to take all of the discussions that we've had and all the information that the administrator, the assistant administrator, especially Finance Director Coppola and staff, probably missing the commission folks, Gail Coyne and Christy Santori, but that staff has really worked to present to you, to put that in a form where we could begin to mark mark it up and work on it to get this ready for the assembly in August so that we can meet the deadline of when the board and the administrator, and maybe they can touch on that a little bit later, when the board and the administrator intend to begin working on the next budget. So that's kind of where we're at procedurally from my discussions with the chair and the deputy speaker, who can correct me if I'm wrong.
Thank you. Yes, this is the meat and bones are there, and there's certainly some language that can be amended. I'm not sure I agree with Mr. Gallagher on that, but also, I mean, we also have to think about all of the fees. We have to think about the dredge and health and any other fees structure that we have. But that's a study that's going on. It's the indirect cost rate study and the classification and comp study. Those are numbers that are in progress and haven't come to us yet. So there's some time to use in our own benefit to find out when that will come. I think one of those studies is supposed to be due fairly soon, but we haven't put any specific numbers to anything. We just directionality has been the focus of this. Is where does this go next, and who is responsible for making this? And the reason and again, I'm ranting on a bit about everything that's been said, but I think it belongs as a resolution because and at this point we have no power to demand these things. This is our thought process of what everyone should be thinking of: the long-term financial stability of the county. Everyone should be on the same page with maybe different ideas of how to get there. So I think it belongs in the resolution stage. What the next stage, what the assembly has, the financial power for this is if some of this finds its way into the budget that we don't agree with, we have the financial power to discuss that and potentially take it out of the budget. That's down the road. But right now, I think in a resolution form, it's the best way you can say our collective thoughts on the finance committee are these. And I would think, I mean, honestly, I don't know what the administration will say if they read it. Mr. Fletcher, have you sent this draft over to the administration?
I did, Mr. Chair, but they are very busy people, and they got it this morning.
No,
the same way
I'm
that
not
you
asking
did.
for time structure. I'm not asking for any. I just want to make sure that everyone's involved in this because I think we should all be going in the same direction. With everybody's got a little bit different idea how to get this, but I think we all think that the county should be in financial terms. And Director Copeland was very specific about how quickly we could be in deficit without doing something. So this addresses the main product of this. It addresses the potential future of deficits and how we can ameliorate those things by positive action, especially with focusing on some of the reserve funds. So I think it's in synopsis, it's what we've been saying. In synopsis form, it's what we've been saying. There's a lot of tweaking to do, and there's a lot of more information to come in. But I'm really glad that we've gotten this far this quickly to put this on a piece of paper. And tweaking is easy, But I'd like the administration to ponder it and at their own time schedule say what they think that we should be thinking about. And again, once again, these are all we can come up with at this point in time is recommendations. That's our job. Is the financial security of the county. Thank you. I see Deputy Speaker Frizzell. You are muted.
Sorry. So I want to point out that a week ago, the speaker and I attended the commissioners' meeting. And at that meeting, I did mention to the board that we were doing this, that we were in the process of preparing this resolution. That would be recommendations from the assembly. And the chair of the board said that was a good idea, that welcomed our involvement in this. And so I think we should be able to be aligned, let's put it that way, with the board. But at least the initial reaction to this process by the Finance Committee and potentially the Assembly, and at that time I said it would be a resolution, it seemed to have received a good reception from the board. Let's put it that way.
Good. I did attend that meeting virtually. And thank you for
Oh,
doing
okay.
that, and the speaker as well. Yeah, so again, I think the framework of this is very well written. It's very thorough. We can add fees, we can do it, but honestly, I think we should hope to get some feedback from the Board of Regional Commissioners and the administration about this and how to attain it and at what level. I know that we really have to be very careful, and it was stated in this. We have to be very careful to remain competitive with both municipal and county governments and the private sector going forward, and that asking for that comprehensive compensation package that they get, including retirement and everything else like that. That's coming about, and that's something that's going to be really important to know. And everything was touched. That even do we really need we need to know if someone retires, if we have to replace them, we have another less expensive alternative to go to. I mean, everything was touched on there, and I'm really grateful that we've been able to come to this point in time so judiciously and rapidly. So that's my opinion. Anybody else for that in that regard or any other regard about this? I think this is really important, and I think we should continue to touch it up, and I think we also need to get more data as it becomes available, on those two studies that are ongoing right now. So I'm not in a hurry to finalize this, and I'll listen to anyone that doesn't want it to be a resolution. But in my opinion, a resolution is plenty of force to use at this point in time. Delegate O'Malley, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think in terms of our timing, probably one of the most critical pieces, and it's pretty nicely detailed in this, is the labor negotiations that would be involved in any alteration in the benefit ratio, the part that's borne by the employees. And I mean, I see even the notion of a sort of a stepwise increase, a stepwise incremental change in that percentage. And I don't recall that we did that, but I think it's appropriate. We need to have this to know that this is on the horizon, and we need to start exploring how that's going to go. This clearly could be, it is, this issue is at the heart of virtually every major labor dispute. The nurses' strike at the Brigham and Women's that just completed was largely around this very issue. It's extremely contentious. We can expect a significant pushback, and I think we're going to have to start conversations with the appropriate unions. I hate to see it happening myself, but clearly this is a conversation. This is one of the options, and this is an option that involves a lot of money in the budget, and so I don't know how we can avoid it. It's my sense that sooner rather than later, let's get this conversation going. Let's get some clarity about what we should be asking for, what's appropriate, what can be appropriately borne by our employees. But I would say let's move ahead on that one.
Thank you. Delegate Prizell. You are
Muted. I know I'm unmuted now. In that light, we haven't discussed this before, but I'd like to lay this out on the table. I have found in other locations, other municipalities that I've worked in finance committee work, that the union contract has a spillover effect to the non-union employees. So when we talk about, the union employees, and that's, a chunk of our employees and it's going to have an impact, I'd like to know how that spills over to the non-union, because it's been my experience with other municipalities that what the union gets, it's the non-union's not far behind, right? So when we talk about the union contract, we might want to think a little more broadly that it's not just the union people that are impacted by those negotiations and the results of those negotiations, but other people as well. And maybe the administration can give us better insights on that point.
Now, I'm going to go to Delegate Killian, Doc, if you've got your hand raised up, let me know if it's still raised up for a reason. But I'm going to go to Delegate Killian because he hasn't spoken.
I did,
recently.
Chair. I was to respond to that.
Okay,
Just
go
to
ahead.
Just to respond to Delegate Frizzell, it was not my intent to suggest that it was only the unions, but it is with the unions that there will need to be negotiations, and those can sometimes be protracted. With non-union staff, it's in a sense possible to almost to impose. This is a change in conditions, but we would with the two unions involved face long times. I agree entirely that there will be a spillover. That we do in that regard. I did not mean to rule that to leave that other out.
Thank you, sir. Delegate Killian.
Yes, I was just going to respond in a similar manner that Delegate O'Malley did, but that's exactly it. We don't have what I would consider a large group of unionized employees, but those are the ones that obviously that require the most time to negotiate. Whereas the non-union, that's more of a yearly budgetary issue that we can deal with. And I believe Administrator Dutton mentioned that the negotiations for the contract that expires next June will begin probably sometime towards the end of this year, and he can correct me on that. But just to speak a little bit also to the timing, I do think we should set a time when, this is the end, and we have to put forward this message. And I would say it's sooner rather than later. Hopefully within about 30 days, we could do that. Certainly by September 1st. I think that will be appropriate.
Thank you for that. We were talking about the value of what our total compensation package is versus the private sector and the municipals. There's not many counties to go with this, but what is our value? What is our total compensation package, and is it remain viable through our hiring and retention process? The commissioners last year saved 8% by not tweaking the 75-25, but by tweaking the certain drugs that for quick weight loss. That tweak. Then maybe this is another tweak. Maybe we have to redefine what is available, what kind of programs are available. Like some are much more expensive than others. Maybe the HMOs are a little more cost friendly to the county than some others. But that's another thing. We in this we directed the administration to look at those, and maybe there are much more delicate ways to save money, just as that it was remarkable what that saved just by getting rid of the fat reducing drugs. So there's that we mentioned that, and that should be underlined. I don't know, but I thought that was a very well thought out process. And we're just strongly suggesting this to the administration. That's all we can do at this point is suggest. Delegate O'Malley.
Thank you, Chair. It's actually my understanding that decision was not made by the board, but rather by the GIC. I believe that is across the board in the Commonwealth, that decision to eliminate coverage there.
Right.
The element that we clearly have some control over in our going forward is the packages that are offered. What varieties, what flavors of insurance coverage, whether those are high deductible plans, which clearly are less expensive. But I think the coverage package is determined at the Commonwealth level by the GIC. That's my understanding of it.
Well, thank you for that correction. I'm always willing to be corrected. I know that was done sort of right at the last minute before the budget was finalized. So there are other very thoughtful ways that might be tweaked rather than when you go from 75 to 25 to below that's a significant point with every employee that is covered by this. So And another thing that I'm a little freelance, but another thing they did is they offered a compensation if they did not take the government, the county thing. So there are ways that before we go to 2575, I hope the administration is looking at other ways that will save us money without changing the structure right away. And maybe that's something that we have to discuss after 28. I don't know. I think what we're doing right now is giving a blanket thought process of what we want to do to make sure that the county stays financially viable into the far future. And that's the goal of this. And I think it's very well stated. We haven't gotten into specifics. We know that the administration has their own timeline and their own thought process, but I think this is thought-provoking for both sides of the county government. Thank you. I see Deputy Speaker Frizel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So moving forward, so let's talk about next steps.
Yeah.
I get 2 important points at least out of our discussion today. Number one, it seems to be a consensus that the form of this advice, if you will, is a resolution, not a report of the committee, not an ordinance, but a resolution. That seems to be where everyone's coming out, and I think that makes sense. So that seems to be where we're headed in terms of the format for what we're going to do. Secondly, there seems to be consensus that we should not wait till October, that we should complete our resolution and put it forward to the Assembly for adoption by September 1st. I hear, month of August, the next 30 days, and Delegate Killian saying by September 1st. So that seems to be another one of our consensus items, which is important. So then we get to, well, what do we do next, very next thing, if we're going to meet that deadline and continue with this current format of resolution? One thing is we can hear back from the administration. They just got this morning, so they probably need some time to look at it before they're ready to give us some feedback about it. And obviously, their feedback would be valuable to have. And then we, as a committee, probably need to digest it a little more, seeing as we all just got it this morning. And maybe we set an agenda for the next meeting of our committee to incorporate this feedback from the members and from the administration, and then walk through the resolution and see where there are things that we put it on the screen, and we walk through and say, okay, in this place we need to do this tweak, in this place we need to do that tweak, so that we produce a nearly final next draft at the next meeting of the committee, so that by the second meeting, the meeting after that, we're ready to say, this is the product. This is what we're going to ask the Assembly to approve. So it gets on the Assembly agenda. That's just, a thought I throw out, see whether that strikes people as a good way for us to keep making progress here.
So that is a really good timeline, and I think it's what the summation of the committee is asking for, not wait until October. But if I was just going through the calendar, if we're going to do this as soon as August is over, September 2nd is our first meeting in September. So maybe that should be the goal, to present that to the Assembly. And we can kind of work backwards from there to find out how many more meetings we have and when we want to finalize our own thought process, so we can send it to the Assembly. Does that sound like a reasonable? If we're going to do it, going to send it to the Assembly, should we send it to them bring it up for a vote on September 2nd?
Excuse me just for a second there. I think to be introduced on that date, not a vote on that date.
Introduced.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Delegate Killian, please.
I would be more aggressive at that point, because if we introduce it, that means we're not going to hear it for a couple of weeks. We're in the middle of September at that point. I think we should attempt to have it debated on the 2nd of September. I think that will be, you might consider it a bit of an aggressive schedule, but it's only the middle of July here. I don't see any reason why we couldn't have it introduced at the last meeting in August.
Okay. That would be the 19th. that's your suggestion, Killian?
It is. I think that should be our target. And, obviously if we get other information and we can't get it produced, that's the way it is. But I think we should try and target that to get it introduced and have it debated on the 2nd of September.
Okay, if that's a suggestion that we probably will take up at our next meeting, then we can take it up more right now too. If anybody has any suggestions, maybe I should go through the clerk about this. Can we send sometime after the meeting, after our second meeting, finalizing it to this board? If we send it to the members of the assembly and say this will be discussed and voted on September 2nd, is that a reasonable thought process, Mr. Clerk?
I mean, it is, and I would, in my experience, legislative work tends to take longer than you think it does. You've got to build in time in the schedule for the unforeseen. Can you guys hear me?
Oh, yeah.
You got to build in time for the unforeseen. And so really, the other thing to keep in mind is this is not like an ordinance. The whole assembly got this morning, the same time as you guys. And there's nothing really to stop the assembly, especially if we have a transparent process from here to then, of taking up a resolution that's been recommended by the Finance Committee on September 2nd, the same night that they, quote unquote, get it. Like, a resolution is not as formal as an ordinance. It doesn't have to be introduced the same way. So,
so we could still present that then and discuss and vote on it on the 2nd, which is
absolutely. There's nothing to stop you, and especially if you, again, you're running, which we normally do in the assembly, a transparent process so that they can see what we're doing and keep abreast on it. I mean, we'll have a meeting on the if we have the 19th, the 5th, where we'll have we'll have the ability to, if the report for this meeting can be given on the 5th, and any other meeting you have between now and the 5th. And so that's the chance for the assembly to get up to speed. And as long as you're being transparent about where the document is, and the speaker is okay with that, I don't see any problem with having it on the agenda to be debated, and potentially voted on at the first meeting in September without necessarily introducing it in August. If you keep working on it, especially if it's being sponsored by all of you and coming as a recommendation from the committee itself, you should be fine.
And that's good. And because of the fact that it's being introduced as a resolution gives us more wiggle room. In other words, that's good to know. Thank you. Deputy Speaker Frizzell, please.
So following on this discussion of timing, so today's the 15th. We have 2 more Wednesdays in the month of July without an assembly meeting. So we should pick at least one of those 2 Wednesdays for our next meeting to entertain all feedback and start doing sort of a drafting session, quote unquote. And then that would leave August 5th as a Wednesday for the assembly, but August 12th, perhaps, a meeting of this committee to finalize and approve what goes to the assembly to be introduced potentially on August 19th.
Good. And we'll discuss the people's availability and make it a concise meeting too. I mean, we've all done our homework. This has been a very interesting and precise meeting today. If we can keep doing that, we can have at least a meeting or 2 and just touch it up, get around. Perhaps the administration will come to the table at some point, whether formally or informally, and give us some feedback. That would be great. And then we also have the advantage of maybe getting more information on one of these, the indirect study costs or the classification compensation study. Maybe in that time, we'll get more information about that. That's nothing we have any jurisdiction over, but that would be nice if we got any feedback on that. And that was kind of promised as a fairly short time structure. So I like that. Does anybody have a specific time we should meet next? We have two July Wednesdays that no assembly will meet.
I'll just comment, and I'm going to be away on vacation next week, but I'm available all the Wednesdays thereafter.
Good. That's great news. Okay. I'll be away the last week of August, but the 22nd to the 29th, but that's not an assembly. Oh yeah, the 29th, I guess would be right. Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm actually good. Anybody else have any? No? Uh,
Delegate
Delegate,
Gallagher's a good, yeah.
Delegate Gallagher, please.
Yes, my hand is raised. I'm the opposite of Jim. I am here next week, but I will be away in Maine on the 29th. It's inevitable that some of us will be available and some of us won't.
Okay. Well, my own thought process is I think the 29th is the better day just because it gives us a little more time to gather everything up, and maybe the assembly members themselves we have one here. They'll have maybe some thought process to feed into the finance committee too. So I would think that 2 weeks is good, but I'm available for both of them. Delegate O'Malley, you're available?
I'm sorry. Yes, I am available. I'm not planning on being away this summer.
Okay. So we have at least 4 on each of those 2 days.
Yeah, I will be available the 29th of July, as well as the 12th, the 5th, 12th, and 9th, all of August. I will say I will be away on September 2nd. And
Okay.
it doesn't preclude my potentially participating remotely, but I will not be physically present
But
on September 2nd.
if the job is done, that's good. That
Yeah.
it's presented as a whole that day. Yeah, and you're enjoying yourself. I can understand it.
Yeah.
So what you want to aim at the 29th
Yes,
for our next meeting, 4 p.m., 1 hour guaranteed. That's it.
sounds good to me.
I'm sorry that you won't be here, Delegate Gallagher, but I think that 4 people plus we have 2 alternates, and Mr. Fuller is online. Mr. King may be watching this in another manner. So let's make it 4 o'clock on the 29th for our next thing, and we can work with the administration to find out any results from those studies and anything else that they might come up with for feedback through the clerk. Does that sound reasonable too?
Yes. And I did take to heart what I think Delegate O'Malley said, which is we should keep making our progress, and we can't keep holding up our progress because there's this one more piece of information that's coming another week or
Yeah,
month
no, I
or
know.
whatever. Yeah, yeah.
That's not the end all, but it would help if that
Sure.
does coincide with our
Yep.
thought process. Our thought process is going to go on regardless of the timing of it. But I just say it would be valuable information if we got some results
Sure.
from one of those studies.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from the committee? Thank you very much for your valuable time. We are adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.